Hi, Miss Martin. Welcome to Authorlink. We are so thrilled to be able to interview you today about the Librarian Spy. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
We're doing great too, and we're very excited to talk about your wonderful new book, The Librarian Spy, a novel of World War II. So we wanted to ask you, this is similar to your previous novel in the sense that it's been put in the same time bracket, World War II, The Last Bookshop in London, which was a roaring success. Um, what was the idea for The Last Bookshop in London? And I mean, we understand that it was because of the bombing event in London in the during the Blitz in late December
Right.
1940, and it was estimated that over 5 million books were destroyed. I never even knew that. I hadn't. I mean, it's
Yeah, it was
it's
it
always
was so
painful
many.
to hear and to
I
read.
know it was really horrible, and it really it almost was like the most perfect conditions for such an atrocity to happen like that because the Thames was at its absolute lowest, so there was no water that they could pull in after the water mains were bombed, and so it really was. I mean, there was nothing they could do but just kind of stand and watch everything burn, and it took about 3 days to completely burn itself out, and about 5 million books were destroyed then.
Oh,
And with the paper shortage on, they couldn't just reprint those. So it was really very devastating to the book community for sure.
yeah. And we understand it was a way for you to honor the celebration of reading, even when it was a time during which there was this feeling of everything is lost, just like it was for us recently with COVID. Um, is that correct? I mean,
Yeah,
what was the
absolutely. I
inspiration
mean, it really
behind?
is. It's really just, thinking about what books mean to us in our darkest times. And even with the book communities, like a lot of the independent bookstores and the wonderful events that they coordinate that really bring readers and authors together, that was a really big part of it as well as like a celebration of reading, but also an appreciation for what the book community really does do for our souls.
Yes. And so, what was the inspiration then for the Librarian Spy? And is this like a book that's connected to the first book about the last
So
bookshop?
they're not connected. They're totally separate. So all of the characters are separate. This one, basically, the inspiration for this is America took spies from, or I'm sorry, took librarians, like for example, from the Library of Congress, where Ava Harper, my character, is coming from, and relocated them to neutral countries during World War II, like Lisbon, which is the country that I went with, or Portugal was the country I went with. Lisbon is the city. And so they went there and they had to find all of this material from bookstores and stationery shops and even newspaper, like little newspaper kiosks, to send this information back to America. So really, the primary inspiration for the Librarian Spy was because I have to admit, I would be a horrible spy. I don't lie very well. Like, I'm kind of bumbling. I'm very clumsy, little things like that. And so, it's definitely one of those things where I was thinking, imagine being a librarian and you're in this world where you know all the answers to all the questions and you get sent off to a country that you don't know. And you are now having to do sort of reconnaissance almost. And how would that be? And so that was sort of the approach that I was going into it with. And of course, once I started digging into the research, that's when you start to really see how difficult it was for the refugees. The reason why there were, I was going to say, do you mind if I just close my door really quick? Sorry. I apologize. There's like all kind. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a lot of noises going on. So I just figured I would try to make it a little bit quieter. So obviously live podcasting here. At least the cat didn't attack me. I'm good with that.
No
Um,
problem.
but so with Lisbon being a neutral city and Portugal being a neutral country, you had a lot of the refugees that were trying to escape Nazi occupation, and so they went to these neutral countries, and they would have to wait there to all these different visas they had to get. It really was ridiculous, this whole sort of rigmarole that they all ended up being stuck in. And if they even had all of their visas, then they couldn't get a boat pass. And if their visas expired, then they had to do the whole process again. And rather than countries saying, oh, we're not accepting any more refugees, they would just make the red tape that much thicker. And so these poor people were just trapped for months and months and months. And, they didn't have any money. They're worried about their family that's back home. Some of them really just escaped with the clothes on their backs. So when you start to really realize everything that they were going through, I mean, that really started to be such a strong foundation for the story. And then in addition to all the refugees, you also have spies from all over. So for Casino Royale fans out there, the inspiration actually came from Lisbon during World War II. So if you would imagine, and unfortunately a lot of our American spies were really kind of thrown in there without any training. They really didn't know what to expect, and now they're walking around all these very consummate spies. And so that's sort of along the lines of like what my heroine is having to deal with. And when I'm doing my historical fiction books, I like to really base a lot of the plot off of actual events that happened in history. And with Lisbon being a neutral country, there weren't really a lot of events that were happening in Lisbon, which is why I bring in my other character. And she is with the French Resistance. And so, and Lyon was actually the capital of the French Resistance. And so she works for a printing press, and they actually used to do coded messages in all of the newspapers that they would send out. And so I thought, oh, well, that's a wonderful way to sort of tie in the two characters, because one is looking for publications, international publications, and the other one is creating them. And actually, the French character, Elaine Rousseau, is based off of a real woman who existed back then. And she was one of the few female typographers working on the printing press in the underground. And her story is just really incredible. Like, I don't want to go into too much detail, because I just have to say, if you read it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is based off of a real woman, because it is such an incredible story. So, and of course, mine is still fiction, so she's inspired my character, but the author's note details all of the reality.
That's wonderful. I mean, this is the reason why people like myself pick up historical fiction, because as much as we love the idea of studying history, it was so much more. It was very dry, wasn't it? I mean, historical fiction really allows you to get your teeth sunk into a story.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a little bit, it's like brain candy, but also like education at the same time. So it's like the best of both worlds, it really is. It's the best.
It's basically coated in sugar, basically. Well, in the sense that it's addictive. Because,
enjoyable.
Right. It's couched in the story. So you learn so much about history, or about people that often have been missed, especially women.
Yes. And I do have to say, from someone's perspective who reads a lot of nonfiction, there are still some very, very dry, painfully dry books out there. Even I'll get to some of them and I'm like, I don't know, I can't even keep track of what I'm reading because it's so boring.
I believe you, yes. So before you started writing historical fiction, what kind of books did you like to write? We understand that you were writing historical fiction / romance books, which are also like really good fun to read. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes. So I was actually writing historical romance beforehand. Right. And this during the whole journey and my whole process has kind of opened up my eyes to how much I really enjoy the researching aspect of writing historicals, because I didn't just write historical fiction. I wrote medieval and I wrote 18th century, and I also wrote Regency. And for anybody who reads Regency, I'm sure you know that it takes a lot of research, yes, because if you are wrong, it gets noted very quickly. So I really delve really deeply into a lot of these time periods that I research before even writing the books. And I found that once I would write a certain time period for a while, I would almost get kind of bored of writing in that time period, and I would switch over to another time period so I could do all this research. And then that's when I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to try writing historical fiction. And so that's kind of how it sort of shifted through all of those time periods into a fresh, completely new genre.
Well, good for you, because it's like you're following your instincts, you're following your, what's motivating you, what's making you, making you feel like, interested.
Yeah.
You're following
Absolutely.
your path.
It took me about 38 books to get to that point, but
Oh my God.
it was so much fun also just getting to write historical romance as well. Just, the whimsical, like sigh-worthy love stories, and like the big strong man, and like, the cunning woman who is very clever. And, it's just absolutely wonderful watching them fall in love in my head and putting it on the page too. So
Yes, especially because the climate now for romance is a completely different one when it comes to like post-COVID and online dating, and people don't meet cute anymore, and blah blah blah. So I can imagine.
It has been fun, and I've always enjoyed writing really strong heroines, and today's environment really lends itself to readers who enjoy reading about strong heroines, and so that's really been an aspect of it that's been enjoyable as well.
Yeah, of course. So did you always want to become a writer?
I think I did. So I always wanted to be a writer, like thinking to myself, like, oh, I would love to be, a supermodel or something. Like, it felt so unreachable. And so when I was a little girl, like, I would always tell myself I would want to be other things, because felt like saying I want to be an author was too far away to even think about reaching. And so, as a little girl, I would start writing a bunch of different books. So my mom gave me this whole collection of kids' stuff that she'd saved for all these years. And amid all of the little honor roll assembly, teachers' awards and stuff like that, were all these little books that I had started. And one of them I even made a little hardcover for. It had like an author dedication. It had like the author's note in the back, and I illustrated it myself, not to brag. But yeah, it was this whole story about how girls crashed on an island and they all became mermaids.
Sounds good. At least they didn't fight each other like.
Oh yeah, no, there was no Lord of the Flies going on here. It was definitely like a little middle school. I was in middle school and I loved mermaids. So yeah.
Oh, that's so cute. So what was the first story that you had ever officially written? Maybe not a childhood version, but like as a young adult perhaps, or as a person that had decided to launch into writing properly?
Well, that is a book that nobody will ever read. So I actually started writing about 5 years before I published my first book. And the reason for that is I decided I was going to write these books. And so I wrote my first book, and I was like, oh, this is so exciting. Like, I can't wait to get published. And so I joined a local writers group, and another woman and I swapped books, and we did critiques on them. And I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I am I'm very, very type A. I always joke that I'm so type A on 12-point Times New Roman font. And so I spent the next several years really just learning everything that I possibly could about writing, because I didn't want to write another bad book. And so I went to every conference. I listened to every CD at the time, because old school, and I read through every book on writing that I could possibly find. And I would write like little short stories. And so finally I ended up writing my book called Deception of a Highlander. And my girlfriends were like, oh, it's so good, you have to submit it. So I submitted it to nationwide contests, and I did 3 of them, and then I finaled in all 3 of them, and then I won first place in all 3 of them. And so, so that definitely gave me the confidence to go on and find my agent, and that's kind of how it all started. So
wonderful.
Yeah. So I really front loaded a lot of that, all the learning and everything before getting back into it.
That's wonderful. So
thank you.
Were you inspired by any particular books? Like, what were your favorite books?
Well, actually, what really got me started writing was Diana Gabaldon. If you've read Outlander, Oh my gosh, that series is so good. So for anybody who has not read Outlander, you must. And if you just watch the TV shows, they're fabulous, but it's not the same. You must read it. So I really loved the idea of like the big brawny Scottishman and like, sort of like the headstrong English woman, the Sassenach, and so it was this whole sort of love story in my head. I loved it so much that I wanted to kind of stay in that world. Yes. And so my very first book, The Deception of a Highlander, is about a female English assassin and a Scottish laird.
Yeah, it sounds perfect for me. Did you have any challenges in your road to publishing? Like, did you have to, you just explained that you were placed in, you were placed first in 3 national competitions, but before that and before having this feeling of not being, not really knowing exactly how to go about writing your first book, did you, after you had written your first manuscript, did you have any roadblocks? Did you have problems with agents? Did you have problems with editors? Did anything sort of slow you down, or was the trajectory quite good?
Oh no, the trajectory was not good. It was a pretty stagnant one for a long time. And, I did have some issues with my first, because I was with a small press. It didn't sell to one of the big 5 or anything like that. And maybe it's not the big 5 anymore. Maybe it's not the big 4. I can't keep up with it. But, no, I was with a smaller press, and the first series seemed to go well. And so I decided to do a second series with them, and that I had a lot of difficulties with one of the editors that I was with. I won't get into all of it, but fortunately, I have gotten the rights back on those books, and I'm slowly going to start republishing those.
Right.
And then I ended up going with Harlequin Historical, and that was a really lovely experience. So I have a couple of books with Harlequin Historical as well. But really, I did self-publishing as well, just because to be honest, you do make a little bit more money with self-publishing because you don't have any royalties to worry about. So yeah, so it has definitely been a very long journey, and I've only been really writing full-time for the last 2 years. Prior to that, my running joke is that I was a full-time mom, full-time business analyst, and full-time writer. And yeah, I didn't sleep very much. I probably slept about maybe 4 hours a night. But my daughters are very active in all different kinds of things like horseback riding, gymnastics, ballet, Girl Scouts, all that kind of stuff. And so I had my day job, and then I had my mom job, and then all the little spots in between. And like really early in the morning, that's when I would do all of my writing. So I did about 7 to 8 books a year for the last, I think like 3 or 4 years before I finally got to go full time.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't even know how I did it now.
I don't know how you did it. My gosh, I've got one daughter and one child, and yeah, it's pretty busy with all of those things that you mentioned. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So what kind of advice would you give to struggling writers, or people that are, have just started out, or people that have been struggling for years to be published, or like what would be your best advice for them?
Well, I guess 2 things. One would be to keep learning, because I actually have an author immersion that I'm going to be doing with Margie Lawson next month. I feel like nobody ever knows everything. You always can keep learning, and learning will always make your craft improve. So 100% always keep learning. And I know it's super cheesy, but don't give up. Seriously. It took me 38 books before I really felt like I hit a lot of success with my books. And of course, I'm terrified about, the next one, and like, oh no, well, what if people don't like that one? So it's not even like you can really sit back and be like, oh, okay, I've done really well with one book and the rest is smooth sailing. It's still just be patient with the process and be patient with yourself and recognize that you have your own journey and your own path.
Wow. 38 books, and you still have that worry whether that people are going to like
it. Yes, it's like crippling.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm starting to write my next book right now, and I've done so much research, and I went to Poland for 2 weeks for research for it, and then I sat down to write it, and I'm like, but what if it's horrible? And what if nobody likes it? And what if I'm not even doing this right? And what am I doing writing? I don't even know anymore. So, yeah, I don't know if that ever goes away. I really hope it does.
Yeah, I suppose it's helpful in one way.
Uh-oh, I think we froze. Hopefully it's not me who's frozen. Did you freeze? Are you frozen too? Did I freeze?
I think you froze a little bit. Maybe I froze too.
No. Just like a little freeze party.
No, we're good now. I think we're good to go.
Okay.
So what I wanted to ask you is, who are your first readers? Who are the people that around you, the close people around you that say, you know what, Madeline, this maybe we should change, or maybe you need to tweak part of the plot a little bit. Like, is it your editor, your agent? Is it your
well, first of all, I have to say that if edits involved twerking, it would probably be way more fun. But so I have a really close friend. I'm just teasing you. I have a really close friend who reads actually my chapters as I write them, which is wonderful because it really helps me know that I'm on the right track. There's nothing worse than having written an entire book and find out on chapter 2 that something derailed, and you're all the way like in China when you really should have been in Australia. So yeah, I don't know why I did that with the geography. I was way off. But anyways, so she reads it, and then also my best friend is Eliza Knight, who is also a historical fiction author who also writes historical romance as well. So she reads my book after I'm all done as well. And then I send it to my agent, who is Kevin Lyon, and also to my editor as well. So it does get a lot of eyeballs on it. And then after I finish going through my copy edits, my mom always reads it one last time. And it means so much to me that she always does that. And she actually got to go to Poland with me for my research for this next book. And, for her, I'm so excited for her to get to read this book once I get out of my head and I get it written, because then she'll get to see all of those places and all the research that we did really come to life on the page.
Oh, yes, of course. And do we know the title of the last book? Is it sort of part of the World War II series that you're writing?
It is, yes. So it definitely is World War II. It's not connected to the books either, but it is called The Keeper of Hidden Books.
Oh, and that's right. Yes, I did read something about that. It sounds amazing. I love your titles. They're immediately like, wow, like I have to read this book.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is on Goodreads right now. It doesn't have a cover and it doesn't have a blurb, but if anybody wants to add it to their want to read, I'll be posting little updates and everything as they go.
Right, thank you. Good to know for our readers.
Thank you.
You also said in a WordPress interview once, I think it might have been a few years ago now, that you do tend to over-edit your books, and that you tend to, and this resonated with me because this is me as well, and apparently this is something that the human brain does. You edit something, you correct it, and then it's invisible, like you can't see it anymore, and even though there might be something further for you to edit, you can't see it
right
until somebody else lays a fresh pair of eyes on it. So are you very, very nitpicky when it comes to your editing on your...
Oh, yeah.
How many times do you go through a manuscript? Like I spoke to an author the other day, and she said that she edits her manuscripts over 100 times.
Oh, wow. No, I'm not.
Yeah, she was like this, full, fully accoladed author. Another author just as amazing only edits once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was like, everyone's got a different
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have to say, I've gotten to the point now where I don't edit as I'm going anymore. I just go. And then at the very end, then I read through it one time. I do the edits that other people send me. And then when I get my copy edits, that's when I read through them again. But once the book is published, I don't ever read it or listen to it, because then I start to tear it to pieces. And I'm like, why would I have written that? That was so dumb. Why would you do that, Madeline? Like, I'm so unkind to myself. Like, I would never, ever tell anybody anything. Like, the way that I talk to myself is never how I would ever talk to anybody. me. But I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, every single book I just I love my narrator, Saskia Marleveld. She is just such an exquisite narrator. I'm a huge audiobook fan and she's my favorite. So really having her narrating my books is like, I'm a little starstruck, I'm not going to lie. But even with her beautiful, beautiful voice, I still can't listen to my own books. I just
worry that you're going to find something
words apart. Oh, I know I'll find a ton of stuff that I would have changed if I could have go back in there.
That's hard, isn't it? I tend to do that as well with my own writing, where I go back and I'm like, oh no, that's, even though it was perfect and I was happy with it, and yeah, I completely understand, and I think quite a lot of authors do that too, where they just don't read anything after it's been published, it's already pushed, it's been sailed away.
Yep. I always tell myself when I turn in a book, this is the best of my ability right now that I can write this book, and I'm going to let it go.
Without explanations, yes.
Yes.
So what's your daily writing schedule like? Like, how much do you allocate to research? How much do you allocate to plotting? Do you plot? Do you just sort of come up with an idea and then just run with it?
So my days are pretty chaotic. I like to joke that I'm a full-time mom with this little writing gig on the side because, and my kids will be like, yep. They are totally shameless. So, really it's like, especially with summer right now, my whole world is kind of revolving around doctor's appointments that we haven't had a chance to do all year, and horseback riding, camp counseling, and volleyball camp, and all these other friend visits and everything. And so I really just kind of write when I can. Oftentimes you'll see me in doctors' waiting rooms or dentist waiting rooms, like typing away. But as far as, usually when I'm writing my historical fiction, especially, I'll front load the research. So I'll research for probably like 9 months to a year. And then I'll work on the plot. Well, actually, I do the character chart first because I feel like I can't have a plot without my characters. And then I do the plot, and I actually plot it out chapter by chapter. And then I know that each chapter will be around 3,500 words. And so I know how long, for the most part, the book will be, give or take a few thousand words. And then I start writing, and I probably write the book in about like 2 to 3 months. So it's like...
Yeah, it sounds very rewarding. It also sounds very, like it sounds like very hard work.
Yeah, it's a process. Yeah, I'm very, like I said, I am very type A, and so for me, I really do like it's very structured for me, and that's how my brain really does work best.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so you've got your next book coming up. What about the future? Are you going to continue on with your historical fiction, or are you going to go back to historical fiction / romance, or will you be looking at other genres? How do you see your future?
You never know. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Every time I read another genre, I'm like, I could totally do a thriller. That would be amazing. And then, I start thinking of these ideas for a thriller, all this stuff. I am definitely planning on writing another more historical fiction. I really just love the research process of it. And then I actually am contracted for another book after The Keeper of Hidden Books. So definitely one more after that for sure. And hopefully things go well and people still want to continue to read my historical fiction. And if that's the case, then I will definitely be writing more for sure. But as far as what the next book is, I have no idea, and I'm trying not to get freaked out about that.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, no, I don't actually get it because I haven't experienced your... the joy of publishing a book and what
not yet
of trying to figure out what's going to happen next. So, but I can imagine. So what is it like when your kids go into a bookshop and they see your novels like on the shelf? Like, do they get excited, or are they like,
Oh no, they're really like such wonderfully huge fans. Like my youngest used to be a little bit aggressive about it. Like I used to keep bookmarks in my purse, and she would like grab them out and be like, "You should read my mom's book," and I'm like, "Okay, we should take it down a little." But it is so cute. But but they really are. They're so proud of me. Like one of my daughters even had to do a presentation on on a hero, and she told me she did it on me, and it was just, I mean, absolutely, I got a little choked up, I'm not gonna lie. It was so incredibly sweet that she did that. And then my oldest, she reads my historical fictions, and and she said that I'm her favorite author. She's a little biased, of course, but my children are absolutely, they're just they're such so supportive, and even my husband, I remember we've been together for about 10 years now. And when he and I first moved in together, I remember one day I went upstairs and I found him cleaning the bathroom, and he was listening to an audiobook. It was one of my romances while he was cleaning the bathroom. It was just
one way to know your wife, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. So, I am so incredibly grateful to just be surrounded by so much love and support. It hadn't always been that way, and the way that it is now is just, I'm grateful for everyone in my life.
I'm so happy for you. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And one last, just fun type of question, which I love to ask because it's so random and people have such weird and wonderful answers. And it's a little bit, it's a little bit common, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Who would you invite for dinner, dead or alive? 3 people, famous or not famous, and why?
Jane Austen, because I absolutely love her books. And I think she would be very cheeky. And Laura Ingalls Wilder, because I loved all of the Little House on the Prairie books. Like, I always wanted to be Mary, but I was just unquestionably Laura, always. Yeah. And then let me think. I think Anne Boleyn, because I have always just really been so fascinated. Honestly, the Tudor time period is one of my favorites in history. And Henry VIII with all of his wives, how can you not be intrigued, right? But Anne Boleyn especially, because I know that she had that charisma, she really had that charm, and that quiet lure that really drew people. And she just sounds like a really fascinating person. So, yeah. So those are my 3 picks.
That would be so cool. Imagine having that on, I don't know, what talk show host show, or
Oh yeah,
David.
Now, I don't know if it would be like to do one-on-one or to do all 3 of them together. I mean, that could be a wild party. I don't know.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you so very much for your time today, and we wish you the best of luck with all of your writing and with the Librarian Spy and your next novel that's coming out and the one after that. And we look forward to reading more of your wonderful work. And good luck with everything. And thank you so much for your time and for talking to our readers today at Authorlink.
It was absolutely my pleasure, Anna. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck with your book too. I can't wait to read it when it does get published and come out.
Yeah, maybe one day. Thank
Definitely.
you. Okay.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.